Good evening, I'm John Carter. Welcome to Poland Daily. The National Bank of Poland has revealed the salaries of its employees. The director of the Central Communication and Promotions Department earns nearly 50,000 zlotys per month. That's around $12,000. The supposedly super high salaries paid at the Polish Central Bank have recently been used as a political tool to topple the bank's chairman, Adam Glapiński. Some parts of the media have been using anti-female rhetoric, suggesting that the female communication manager at NBP should not earn so much. Others are arguing that Polish Central Bank executives' earnings are smaller than their colleagues in other EU member states.
Thanks to this, we're getting closer to building better standards of openness of public life in Poland. I also want to say that the inspection of the Supreme Audit Office is taking place simultaneously. From the information I have, I can tell that this inspection is very detailed, and a short film will be published in June this year. This video will provide information on the matter. What did not appall me is the differentiation of salaries when it comes to some departments of the National Bank of Poland. Some departments responsible for the functioning of the central bank strategies and analysis are getting much lower salaries from the directors of the Communication and Promotion Department. This material is being analyzed right now. Just like I announced earlier, I filed another statement to the President of the National Bank of Poland on February 14th. In the statement, I asked if directors of the Communication Department and the directors of the Cabinet of the President of the National Bank of Poland, on the recommendation of the bank, also sit on the boards of other companies dependent of the bank.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow today. Netanyahu informed Putin that Israel would continue its aggressive activity against Iran, which he sees as the greatest threat to stability and security in the region. The Russian president also accepted an invitation from the Israeli Prime Minister to Jerusalem. It's the first significant meeting between the two since the downing of a Russian spy plane in Syria in September last year, an incident which Russia blamed Israel for. Nonetheless, the head of the Israeli government is maintaining very close ties with the Russian president, which is hardly surprising given that Jews from Russia make up close to 20% of the Israeli population and hold significant power. The elections in Israel will take place at the beginning of April. The Ukrainian authorities have announced their intention to carry out an exhumation at Huta Pieniacka in Wołyń. On February 28, 1944, the Ukrainian insurgent army brutally murdered over 800 Poles. The exhumation is intended to prove that the Polish side exaggerated the number of victims. Wojciech Kosiak has more on the story.
Już jutro będziemy obchodzić 75. rocznicę.
Tomorrow marks the 75th anniversary of the genocide committed in 1944 by Ukrainian nationalists on Polish civilians in Huta Pieniacka. According to the estimations of the Polish Institute of National Remembrance, approximately 850 Poles were murdered here. The Ukrainian side does not believe this figure and plans to exhume all the victims. Ukrainian historians want to prove that the Polish side is exaggerating the number. The Ukrainian media have said that Polish historians will be invited for this process. However, Professor Krzysztof Szwagrzyk of the Polish Institute of National Remembrance denies any such invitation being received by the institution and is skeptical about what the Ukrainian side is doing. We want to take part in it. We're ready to go to Ukraine at any time, but we want the aim of the process to be finding the remains of the victims. However, I'm afraid the goals of the Ukrainian side don't give us a lot of optimism when it comes to the results of the research. The Ukrainian side has been intentionally lowering the body count of the Wołyń massacre and similar tragic events that took place in Ukraine for quite some time now. They also keep denying the fact that these massacres were committed by Ukrainians. A year ago, a memorial plaque was placed at Huta Pieniacka doing exactly that, negating the fact that it was Ukrainians who committed the slaughter at the village. Some of what was written on that plaque is simply unacceptable for us. The plaque says that the Polish Home Army soldiers brutally massacred the Germans, who then then in return slaughtered the village. If the historical agreement between our countries is to be based on plaques like this, then I'm afraid we won't have an agreement at all.
Że jeszcze długo nie dojdziemy do żadnego porozumienia.
Między Warszawą a
Since the spring of 2017, there has been a disagreement between Warsaw and Kiev over the new law in Ukraine forbidding the finding and exhumation of Polish war victims. The ban was issued after a UPA, or Ukrainian Insurgent Army statue, was taken down in Hruszowice in Poland in April 2017.
The ongoing tension between India and Pakistan is continuing to escalate and is seemingly headed towards a major confrontation. The most recent incident involved the Pakistanis claiming responsibility for shooting down 2 Indian fighter jets. India and Pakistan have a long history of conflict, which has severely ramped up on February the 14th when the Pakistani-based Islamist group Jaish-e-Mohammed carried out a suicide bombing in India, killing at least 42 members of the Central Reserve Police Force. Jaish-e-Mohammed's main aim is to take Kashmir from India and unite it with Pakistan in an attempt to enforce Sharia law in Pakistan and eventually rid the Indian subcontinent of Hindus and non-Muslims. The Speaker of the Senate, Stanisław Karczewski, met with the Mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Trzaskowski, today. They discussed the possibility of rebuilding the Saxon Palace in the Polish capital. Although the politicians belong to rival parties, there is a cross-party consensus on the matter. According to the historians, the Saxon Palace is not only a reminder of the beautiful side of our history, but also a sign of Polish identity.
The Saxon Palace has existed as a barrack palace since 1661 and has undergone various changes over the centuries. The palace was remodelled in 1842. Before the Second World War, it was a very famous historical landmark. After the collapse of the Warsaw Uprising in 1944, the Saxon Palace was blown up by the Germans as part of the planned destruction of Warsaw. Only parts of the central arcade remained, serving now as the tomb of the unknown soldier. There are plans to rebuild the whole palace. Both politicians who met today, the Speaker of the Senate and the Mayor of Warsaw, described the talks as being in good faith. We presented our ideas, our doubts, our views on the possibilities of the reconstruction, the rebuilding of the Saxon Palace, and agreed with the mayor that in a very short time, experts should meet to discuss the details. The most important thing is, of course, whether to rebuild the palace, what function it would have. We certainly agreed that if it were to happen, it would have to be open to functions that would serve not only Warsavians, but also Poles in general, and therefore we decided to talk about it and entrust the matter to experts. If there is a debate about the possible rebuilding of the Saxon Palace, it should be done in a completely clear and transparent manner. According to the Deputy Minister of Culture and National Heritage, it appears from archival sources that the architect, Professor Jan Zachwatowicz, wanted to rebuild the palace after the war, but didn't get permission from communist authorities. As she noted, the available documents indicate that the palace hasn't yet been rebuilt for political reasons. She added that there is full documentation of the palace that facilitates planning of the reconstruction in accordance with standards.
This reconstruction will be meticulously done according to plans, projections, and all the documentation we have, and we really have a lot. Let me say that it will be the pride of Warsaw.
The Saxon Palace served as the headquarters of the General Staff of the Polish Armed Forces before the Second World War, and the most important official Polish events took place in the square in front of it.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening at Poland Daily. I'm John Carter. Stay tuned after the break for Poland Daily weather, followed by the business, culture, travel and the history.